Joachim, what if the clearest messages are the ones never spoken? That was the question that hit me like a physical blow, staring at the casual digital note on our kitchen tablet screen. Not a handwritten letter, not a tearful confession, just a stark, bold notification above the remnants of last night's pasta. Away for the weekend. Breathe a little. I need to remember what being alive feels like. Don't forget pancake. And the small, perfectly drawn sun icon at the bottom. That icon, so dismissive, so flippant, twisted something deep inside me. Maeve hadn't called. There were no hushed goodbyes or the telltale rustle of bags being packed while I was awake. She must have moved like a phantom in the pre-dawn hours, slipping away while I lay beside her, probably dreaming of mundane shared futures, like our planned autumn trip to the coastal art market next month. She hadn't said where she was going or with whom, but it was signed M. Not Love Maeve, just M, as if I were a stranger she'd once briefly encountered. I didn't reach for my phone to text or call. Instead, I simply fed Pancake, our marmalade tabby, who regarded me with an unnerving sagacity, as if sensing the tectonic shift in our quiet home. He seemed to brace for my collapse, but it never came. My steps led me upstairs to our shared closet, and there I began to pack. Not her things, mine. There were no shouts, no shattered porcelain. I didn't vent my frustration online with cryptic posts, a habit Maeve often indulged in when vexed. I merely folded my shirts, zipped my weekender bag, the worn blue one she always found tacky, and left the bedroom door ajar, a silent declaration to the empty house. Ready to learn the shocking truth? You'd expect a deluge of grief, wouldn't you? Here's what no one tells you about the slow decay of a relationship. Sometimes the end isn't sorrow, it's profound relief. I felt like I'd been holding my breath for nearly a decade, and finally I could exhale. Because this wasn't just about a weekend. This was about the long, drawn-out chill of months, the subtle eye rolls when I spoke of my day, the secret smiles she reserved for her phone, shielded from my gaze. She likely believed I'd wait. A loyal, bewildered fool, dissecting every word she'd ever uttered, wondering where I had erred. But this time, I didn't wait. I made my own choice. By the time Sunday evening rolled around, I was long gone. My departure was devoid of theatrics. No slammed doors, no dramatic farewell note. I simply gathered what I needed. My old film camera, my sketchbooks, that detested blue duffel, and then I vanished. I didn't go far, just to an old colleague's lakeside cabin, a place whispered about in hushed tones, untouched by the clamor of the modern world. It was quiet, still, a sanctuary that demanded no explanations. I arrived late that Friday night, just as the sky bled into that elusive, dusky purple, a hue no camera can truly capture. I brewed tea on the rusted stovetop, opened a novel I had no intention of reading, and let the profound silence wrap around me like a comforting shroud. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the phantom weight of needing to apologize for my existence. What I'm about to tell you might challenge everything you thought you knew about betrayal. Maeve's first call came at 6:12 p.m. on Saturday. Her name, simply M, flashed across the screen as I sketched the moon's fractured reflection on the lake's surface. I let it ring, unanswered, until it surrendered to voicemail. I didn't even listen to the recording. I knew the cadence, the carefully modulated sweetness, the feigned confusion. 3 minutes later, a second call, then a text. Hey, everything okay? Thought I'd be back to a tidier house and a well-fed cat. Another sun icon. The sheer audacity. She truly believed she could disappear for a few days, and I'd remain, a forgotten heirloom, faithfully awaiting her return. That night, I slept soundly, without a single dream. Sunday morning, I awoke to 5 missed calls. No voicemails, no apologies, just her name, a relentless echo on the screen. It was then, staring at that repeated name, that a realization hit me, one that should have surfaced years ago. She didn't think she'd hurt me. She believed she owned me, that I was an immutable fixture, incapable of leaving because I never had before. But the real punch landed when I checked my email, a force of old habit. She had sent one. Subject, are you there? I didn't anticipate silence. I thought we understood each other. This wasn't meant to be dramatic, Tristan. It was just a weekend, just space. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. Call me, please. No, I'm sorry. No, I miss you. Not a whisper of the deceit she'd woven, just indignation that her pet hadn't come when summoned. Here's what no one tells you about uncovering the truth. She had no idea I'd found her second phone, tucked away under the bathroom sink, behind a bag of cotton balls like some sacred, forbidden artifact. She must have assumed I never cleaned in there. But I always did. That's how I'd stumbled upon the messages from Thane. Not just casual flirtations or winks, but fully formed plans, photos, her confessing she'd pack light, how she couldn't wait to be just Maeve again, untethered from Tristan's quiet life, how this weekend wasn't a mere getaway, but a test run for a life unburdened by me. And she thought I wouldn't notice. I reread her email. I could almost feel her manipulations, slick and insidious, slithering between the lines. No, Maeve, I'm not taking it personally. I'm taking it seriously. She craved freedom. She got it. And when she returned, expecting to rewind the clock and charm her way back into control, she'd discover something she was utterly unprepared for. Silence, an empty closet, and a man who had finally stopped waiting. She returned Sunday night, just after 7. I wasn't there to witness it, but Mrs. Finch, our observant neighbor from across the hall, the one who tended her plastic plants and observed the world through her peephole, sent me a succinct text. She's back. Looks quite puzzled. I could easily picture it, her stepping through the door, dropping her weekend bag, expecting the comforting scent of the cedar candles I always lit, the living room warm, pancake curled up, dinner simmering. Instead, she would have entered a cavernous, echoing silence. Then the small details would begin to register. Her worn slippers absent from beneath the hall bench, the bookshelf slightly askew, all the photography anthologies I'd collected over the years, the ones she'd always dismissed with an eye roll, gone. The framed wedding photograph above the fireplace replaced by a clean, stark patch of wall where our smiling faces once hung. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. This time I answered. I didn't speak. I simply let her voice hang in the air, a hesitant, "Tristan?" Like she couldn't fathom what had transpired. Like she hadn't spent the last 2 days with another man, sipping wine by a fire she hadn't built, wearing that soft gray sweater she once claimed was just for us. I remained silent. Then she attempted a laugh, but it caught in her throat, sounding like a desperate cough. "Okay, I know you're upset, but you don't get to play the victim here. It was just a weekend, not the end of the world." The sentence clung to my ear like a parasitic thought. Every, not a big deal, scraped against my raw nerves. And then, finally I spoke. "You packed a toothbrush, a silk robe, and lingerie I've never seen before for a weekend alone." Silence. "I found your phone, Maeve. The hidden one. I know about Thane. I know about the cabin. I know this wasn't a reset. It was a preview." She gasped, as if I had physically struck her. "Okay, hold on. You went through my personal things? That's a monumental breach of trust. Tristan, you can't twist this narrative." I laughed then, a genuine, unburdened laugh, the first in months. "A breach of trust? You engaged in an affair in secret, and I'm the one twisting things?" She shifted tactics, as they always do. "I just needed to feel something, okay? You don't understand what it's like to live with someone who barely exists. You never fought for me. You just hovered." There it was, the unvarnished truth. Not an apology, but a justification. She hadn't strayed out of loneliness. She strayed because I wasn't loud enough, dramatic enough, selfish enough. She yearned for chaos, for passion, for a man who would challenge her, not one who quietly folded her sweaters and inquired about her day. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply articulated what had to be said. "I'm not coming back. The rent is covered through next month. Keep the apartment or don't, but don't call me again unless it's about pancake." She fell silent for a long, agonizing moment. Then, in the smallest voice I'd ever heard from her, she whispered, "You're truly gone." I didn't respond. I simply ended the call. And just like that, the door I'd left unlocked in my heart finally clicked shut. In 7 days, your life will change. It had been 4 days since I'd last heard her voice. 4 complete days of unbroken quiet. And for the first time in years, I wasn't compulsively checking my phone. I was still at the cabin, waking to birdsong instead of anxiety's grip, brewing rich, dark coffee instead of the instant stuff she preferred, and sketching the trees, just like I used to, before life morphed into a labyrinth of unspoken arguments and swallowed pride. I'd hoped the silence would stretch on indefinitely. I truly did. But on Thursday afternoon, as I stepped out of the back office at the municipal library, there she was, Maeve, standing casually at the front counter like any other patron, wearing the beige trench coat I'd complimented 100 times, holding a travel mug, and feigning an air of normalcy as if this wasn't utterly surreal. I froze. My colleague Declan, however, didn't. He waved at her with an easy smile, oblivious to the slow-motion implosion unfolding between us. "You looking for Tristan?" he asked. She smiled back. "Yes, thought I'd surprise him." I yearned to retreat. I should have retreated, but she had already seen me, and I couldn't feign invisibility any longer. So I walked towards her, my jaw tight, my pulse thrumming loudly in my ears. She surveyed me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes as if expecting a more shattered version of myself. It was clear she'd rehearsed this speech for a fragile man, not the one standing before her. "Hi," she said softly, as if we hadn't just incinerated everything we'd built. "Don't come to my workplace," I said. Not loud, not aggressive, just flat, devoid of emotion. She blinked. "You wouldn't answer my calls. You left without a word. I needed to speak to you in person." "About what?" I countered. "How you orchestrated your affair like a weekend getaway? How you lied, got caught, and now wish to mend things in the self-help section?" Her eyes darted around, checking for eavesdroppers. There were none. The library was hushed. Ironic, wasn't it? It was the one place I always found peace. Now even that felt violated. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Thane meant nothing. He was a mistake, a fleeting fantasy, someone who made me feel seen for a moment. But he's not real. Not in the way you were. He didn't hold my hand through my panic attacks. He didn't champion me through my interviews. You did. My hands were trembling as I did this. And yet I wasn't enough to prevent betrayal. I never meant to lose you. I was just weary of feeling invisible. You were always so calm, so steadfast. I thought you'd never leave, no matter what I did. But you did. And now, I don't know who I am without you. That line, "I don't know who I am without you," felt like a confession shrouded in a compliment. But it was, in reality, a weapon. She wanted me to shoulder her guilt, to feel responsible for her pain. The letter concluded with a plea. Can we meet just once? No expectations, just talk. For a long moment I stared at the page, my eyes tracing the words, but my mind no longer registering their meaning. Then, without conscious thought, I walked outside. The crisp autumn wind bit at my face. I stood near the edge of the woods, pulled out my lighter, and watched the flames consume her meticulously crafted apology, line by agonizing line. She wanted me to carry her shame, to meet her halfway across a bridge she herself had dynamited. But I was not that man anymore. 3 days after her library visit, I began to believe she'd finally received the message. No more texts, no calls, no surprise appearances. The stillness was a welcome balm. But peace, I've learned, is often fleeting when you're dealing with someone who only truly values you once you're beyond their reach. Why failure is the key to success. On Sunday morning, I discovered a letter slipped beneath the cabin door. Not mailed, but hand-delivered. It was folded precisely, sealed in a pale pink envelope. The same kind she'd used for Valentine's cards when things were still good. My name was inscribed on the front in her elegant cursive, the loops of the T exaggerated, trying too hard to convey softness. I stared at it for 10 minutes. I knew reading it would reopen wounds, but a fragile, overly generous part of me still sought to understand why, as if her words could untangle the chaos she'd left in her wake. I opened it. Tristan, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please read this. I didn't go away that weekend expecting everything to unravel. I didn't expect you to leave. I didn't expect you to change. I thought you'd be there when I returned. Like always. That was wrong of me. Already I could detect the subtle threads of manipulation woven into every sentence, positioning herself as the shocked victim of unforeseen consequences. Thane was a mistake, a fantasy, someone who made me feel seen for a minute. But he's not real. Not in the way you were. He didn't hold my hand through my panic attacks. He didn't cheer me on through my interviews. You did. And yet I wasn't enough to prevent betrayal. I never meant to lose you. I was just weary of feeling invisible. You were always so calm, so steadfast. I thought you'd never leave no matter what I did. But you did. And now, I don't know who I am without you. That line, I don't know who I am without you, felt like a confession wrapped in a compliment, but it was, in reality, a weapon. She wanted me to shoulder her guilt, to feel responsible for her pain. The letter concluded with a plea. Can we meet? Just once. No expectations. Just talk. For a long moment I stared at the page, my eyes tracing the words, but my mind no longer registering their meaning. Then, without conscious thought, I walked outside. The crisp autumn wind bit at my face. I stood near the edge of the woods, pulled out my lighter, and watched the flames consume her meticulously crafted apology, line by agonizing line. She wanted me to carry her shame, to meet her halfway across a bridge she herself had dynamited. But I was not that man anymore. The next day I received a message from Declan at the library. He said Maeve had returned. Not inside, but merely stood across the street, watching, waiting. He described her as rehearsing something, mouthing words over and over before finally leaving. She still believed this was temporary, as if love were a door that merely required the right knock. But I had already walked through it, closed it firmly, and this time I wasn't waiting behind it. I was reorganizing the archives in the library's back room when I heard the door chime. Nothing unusual, people drifted in and out all day. But the moment I stepped out, I froze. There, by the main desk, stood Milo, Maeve's older brother, wearing a too-tight sweater and that familiar, smug expression I recalled from our wedding. The same Milo who once told me I was too gentle for his sister, who barely acknowledged me during family gatherings, and who once suggested I grow a backbone after I mentioned volunteering at the animal shelter on weekends. Tristan, he said as if addressing an employee late for a shift. We need a word. I raised an eyebrow, gesturing subtly towards the exit. Not here. We walked outside. The setting sun cast long, dramatic shadows across the pavement. I crossed my arms, waiting. He didn't waste time. She's a wreck, man, he began, his voice low, clearly rehearsed. Crying constantly, barely eating. She thought you'd come around, but now she's terrified you've genuinely checked out. I said nothing. He pressed on. Look, I'm not defending what she did. It was out of line, but you're not entirely blameless either. This changed my life in 30 days. That was the precise moment something inside me snapped, not with an explosive sound, but a quiet final click, like a lock turning irrevocably. Not blameless? I echoed, incredulous. Tell me, Milo, what exactly was my transgression? Maintaining a stable career? Preparing her meals? Enduring brunches where she treated me as if I were invisible? Or was it the part where I remained faithful while she browsed for other men as if she were shopping for clearance shoes? He had the nerve to look distinctly uncomfortable. You didn't fight for her. That's what she keeps saying. You just let her go. I laughed, a sharp, breathy sound that startled even me. She left, Milo. She walked out with a suitcase and a smile. I didn't lock the door behind her. She did that all by herself. He shoved his hands into his pockets, appearing to shrink. She regrets it. Yeah, so do I retorted. I regret wasting 9 years believing I was building a life with someone who couldn't wait to discover what it felt like without me. For a few moments, we stood in a heavy silence. Then he uttered something that twisted my gut. She told me she wants to try again, that you're the only one who's ever made her feel safe. That word, safe, that's what I was to her. A safety net, a fallback, a quiet room to retreat to after the storm she herself created. I wasn't a partner. I was a shelter. Well, I said, my voice now cold as ice. She should have considered that before she went playing house with Thane in a Vermont cabin. Milo flinched as if I'd physically struck him. You know about that? Oh, I know, everything, I said. And now so do you. So here's my message back to your sister. Stop sending proxies to clean up her mess. I'm not her doormat anymore. He offered no farewell, simply turned and walked away, likely realizing for the first time that the quiet man, the one who always faded into the background, had finally stepped out of the frame for good. Nearly 2 weeks of silence had passed since Milo's ambush outside the library. No texts, no letters, no sudden appearances. For a fleeting moment, I started to believe she'd finally grasped the truth, that I was gone, that the man she'd abandoned was no longer lingering in the shadows. I felt no triumph, just a steady, profound calm. Then Friday happened. I was preparing to leave work when Declan called me over. He looked visibly nervous, an immediate red flag. Hey, he whispered. So, someone dropped this off for you earlier. Said it was a donation. He handed me a brown paper bag with a folded note taped to the front. The handwriting was unmistakable. Hers. I didn't want to open it. I knew instinctively that whatever lay inside wouldn't be a healing olive branch, but I also couldn't ignore it. I retreated to the back room, locked the door, and opened the note first. Thought you might want these back. They always meant more to you. Anyway, inside the bag were 3 objects. My grandmother's cherished copy of Leaves of Grass, the disposable camera we'd bought on our first road trip together, and the small ceramic owl I'd found her at a roadside flea market in New Hampshire. The one she'd once called ugly but weirdly sweet, like you. I stared at them, my heart thumping an uneasy rhythm. She wasn't attempting an apology. She was attempting to haunt me. This wasn't a peace offering, it was a trigger. These were fragments of our shared life, meticulously chosen to unsettle me, to sow doubt, to prod that tender part of me that had once believed we were still salvageable. I picked up the camera, still unused. We'd bought it at a gas station, promising to fill it with the messy, unfiltered moments, not just the picture-perfect ones. We never used it. She claimed she always forgot it existed. I'd clung to the hope we'd get to it, eventually. I took a deep, fortifying breath and tossed it back into the bag. Later that night, I called Mrs. Finch. Yes, that Mrs. Finch, the observant neighbor. I asked her something I should have inquired about sooner. Hey, has anyone been stopping by the apartment lately? She didn't hesitate. The blonde one. She's been coming by every evening this week. Doesn't knock, just stands outside for a while, staring at the door as if it's supposed to magically open. I swallowed hard. Thanks, let me know if she comes back. She chuckled. Oh, honey. I already planned to. I hung up and settled onto the cabin's porch. The cool night air seeped into my collar. She was circling, a lone wolf sniffing at the door of a den it once inhabited, waiting for a crack, for a sign of weakness. But she had misjudged me again. The harder she tried to pull me backward, the further I propelled myself forward. I spent the next hour writing her a letter, not because I harbored any desire to rekindle anything, but because I needed closure on my terms, not hers. I kept the letter devoid of drama. No lengthy paragraphs, no guilt-tripping, no wistful nostalgia. I wrote precisely what needed to be said and nothing more. It took me 15 minutes. I sealed it in a plain envelope, addressed it in block letters, and dropped it into the nearest mailbox before I could overthink it. I didn't include a return address. There was nothing I wanted back. Maeve, I received your note and the items. I understand now that you didn't just leave for a weekend. You left long before that, in the quiet ways I chose to ignore. But this isn't anger anymore. It's peace. I hope you find what you're looking for. Please don't contact me again. Tristan. I stood by the mailbox for a moment after, not out of doubt, but because I suddenly understood what that letter truly represented. It wasn't for her, it was for me, for the version of me that had waited far too long for someone who was never truly coming back. That night, I packed my final bag and left the cabin for good. I drove with the windows down, the cold air stinging my face, and I didn't glance in the rearview mirror once. I didn't need to. There was nothing back there I hadn't already faced. Stop! Read this before moving on. 3 months have passed. I relocated to a small, unassuming town by the coast. I found a job at a local museum, cataloging artifacts and telling stories that actually matter. I started taking photographs again. Not for anyone else, just for me. I even adopted another cat. Pancake now has a brother. His name is Biscuit, and he's just as comically judgmental. Maeve never wrote again, never called, and that profound silence finally feels like an undeniable gift. You don't always get the ending you anticipated, but sometimes you get something far better, something clean, something honest. I am not the man I was before she left, but I genuinely like the one I am becoming. If you've ever experienced a moment that felt like an absolute end, but unfolded into a brand new beginning, share it. Whether it was a breakup, a betrayal, or a small, seemingly insignificant event that altered everything. Your story might just help someone else feel a little less alone.